Sitting quietly, doing nothing, the grass grows by itself and the spring comes. So said Basho, the poet. I think ever since I was young, one of the things I really, really wanted, whether it be reading the Bengali version of Sherlock Holmes by Satyajit Ray Feluda, or for that matter, in my teenage years, when I read Sherlock Holmes first, the unabridged version, how Sherlock Holmes used to delight Watson with an expertise on a subject. I always dreamed it was sort of my fantasy to be a human walking encyclopedia, to gain to rattle off to riff on subjects ad nauseum on any given topic. Even in I think it was in Study in Scarlet, was it? No, it probably wasn't. It was the one where the governess, I think. So I forgot the title exactly. The adventure where a governess was hired. I remember now. The Red-Headed League, I guess, where a governess was hired to copy Encyclopedia Britannica by hand, and she, I think, got through A, and then Sherlock Holmes told her, and then after she got through A, Sherlock Holmes told her, "Well, thank you for your service, and but if you gained anything by doing this seemingly pointless, laborious task, is that you at least gained the knowledge." And then we had A.J. Jacobs, the know-it-all guy who read Britannica cover to cover. Apparently, Elon Musk was reportedly read Britannica cover to cover. And Swami Vivekananda, who practiced Brahmacharya for 12 years, was apparently had photographic memory, and he could recite. Now I don't know if he could recite, but he encoded Britannica in his mind. So I always wanted to be one of those guys, and even when you watch the Hollywood movies, you see these guys, whether it be Sherlock, the TV show, or I don't know, Will Hunting in Good Will Hunting, or the TV or Phenomenon. All these shaped and molded and sculpted myself and my mind and my psyche, um, to to live up to that image where a man knows everything, has an encyclopedic knowledge. Obviously, it's impossible. There are apparently 7,000 volumes of Wikipedia that are printed out. So, 7,000, not pages, volumes. And each volume are probably, I don't know, at least 1,000 pages long. So, there are 70,000 pages of world information out there. When I was young, I used to think a genius man be people who could just, you know, knew it all, the literal know it all person. But even James Holzhauer, I don't think he knows it all. If he's a good, undoubtedly one of the best dominant contestant in Jeopardy ever, if not in trivia. But I doubt if you were to approach him and ask him what is the scientific name of ocelot, I'm sure he wouldn't know. But wide read people like him and Ken Jennings and myself, as I soon found out, quarantined, that we, even though we don't know a lot, even though we may not know everything, but we do know a lot. And I don't say that I say it with conviction and devoid of any false modesty, because we humans have this tendency to think we're equally inferior, to borrow Alan Watts's word, the phrase equally inferior. We have this Puritan, and it's residual of Puritan mentality, where we feel we're this poor little me. We must, kneeling on ground on our knees, begging to God for forgiveness and redemption and salvation. We have still, no matter how ultra liberal, progressive, and atheistic you are, we have this, and it's actually worse with atheists. We have this self-pitying mentality that we cannot know it all. Even if you say, I have psychic, you have to, even if you have to show magic, you have to preface it with, I'm not a psychic. Like, apparently Uri Geller, if he came out and said he was a performer, people would have forgiven him for some reason. But the gall, the nerve, the audacity for him to claim that he has supernatural power is, like, it seems unforgivable, a cardinal sin. Apparently Clinton had, who was a Rhodes Scholar, apparently he could, people say he could talk about any subject at length at dinner table. I think it's a fantastic skill to have. Well, what can you do? I apologize for the sound at the background. You can control events outside, so I just have to let it flow. What I'm gonna do is stop my recording and re-record a 7 minutes worth of video. So I'll just write it out. So as I was saying, we tend to think we know very little, and God would strike us dead if we dare claim that we have photographic memory. We have people like Joshua Foer preaching his gospel along with the skeptics that we don't have photographic memory. It's a blasphemy to claim otherwise. If you're And he decisively apparently goes to dismiss Shash Palak and even Kim Pick's claim, which is even documented, and that infuriates me, that he's only, where he preaches this gospel, the only way we can encode memory is with artificial mnemonics, and God forbid, we have subconscious, our subconscious remembers everything. Even it does, even it stores everything, as suggested by, done by Wilder Penfield experiment. And even from personal anecdotes and from personal testimony, now then you'll ask, okay, so suppose you read, what was one book you read? You'll ask me. I'll say, I don't know. Um, okay, fine. The Sherlock Holmes book. And I cannot quote it verbatim. So probably not at gunpoint, but probably if I go into relaxed stage as an expert hypnotist takes me to that day where I read that book, I'm sure if certain neurons are triggered, I could probably see that book in my mind's eye. So anyway, I digress. But the point being, we tend to think we know very little, and we have this we're all equally inferior mentality, and this this Alan Watts will talk about the prickly people. We have this, like, everyone must be analytical, rigorous, and we should dissect everything into pill pool in a hair splitting analysis, and if you don't, that somehow you're failure, that's your failure as a human being if you pursue humanity. So imagine for a moment, if you will, what if you had photographic memory? You could recall any every trash you saw on your strewn outside on your way from home to your liquor store, grocery store, every signs you saw, all the billboards, all the numbers on the billboards, the books you read, the encyclopedias you read, the Wikipedia articles, the YouTube videos, you could recall everything, right? The faces you saw, the names, the barcode number, the ID number, the VIN number. I mean, basically everything. But suppose you live for 30 or 40 years, in that span of time, even though if you don't read anything or don't watch like intellectually rich, fertile, dense subject, you still have a wealth of treasury inside you. And I just realized that quarantine, as we are all now, how that is scary. Once we stop, we shut down computers and our life, we and just sit and just ruminate and reminisce about the stuffs with the life we led. It's almost we have more than encyclopedic memories and photographic memories in our head. For instance, and right now I'm not reading anything, I'm just in my room. Say for instance, yeah, okay, I was going back to ocelot, the scientific name. I'm sure James Holzhauer wouldn't know that, but you could be a regular person, and it's kind of like the Slumdog Millionaire Faye, because you don't know what you saw, and you don't know how it'll come handy. So, for instance, he may not know the scientific name of an ocelot, but okay, let's forget about him. I don't know it, but I know a lot of Latin names of families of order of animals. It's scary almost. Now, if you were to quiz me randomly, I probably would fail, but for instance, um, Corvidae, the crow family, right? I know that there is the order of Citiforms for parrots, Stratiforms, ostriches. So all these are somewhere floating around in my consciousness and my psyche. For instance, the picture of glass lizard I saw once in a encyclopedia, like a children's encyclopedia. And when I talk about lizards, probably my brain, my mind knows all the pictures of skinks I saw, even though it may not recite or parrot out into details the length of the tail, the size, the genus, subspecies where it's found in Africa. But at the same time, for instance, there's a book on frogs. There were 500 pictures of frogs. There's the poison dart frog, and there's the one with the kind of like a frigate bird, but it's not. Okay, I'm thinking of frigate bird, but there is also a frog that same confusing. The frigate bird with the frog that spuma means foam, right? In Spanish. So the one with the foam, like the poisonous foam. So and the only reason I'm talking about is not because I pre-planned it, but it's because it was in my subconscious, and as I was rambling, it suddenly surfaced in my conscious mind. Similarly, there wealth and of information where stored in our memory and our mind that we are not even aware of. I thought of two books, and one I started writing. The one is called Birdwatcher of Antwerp. With that, okay, forget about Birdwatcher of Antwerp. You can Google that, and but originally the idea was this guy he dies, and he realizes it was based off, not based off, inspired rather by the book, Dan Koppel's book, Richard Koppel, the guy, the to see every bird on earth. So basically, this guy dies, and he realized what a loser he is, because that's the feeling that the society wants to project onto us. There, unless even Joe Rogan, who's such a nice guy, but people have this elitist mentality. Unless you become Usain Bolt or Michael Phelps or climb Everest, somehow you're a loser and your worth has no meaning. But so the story was, so the guy, he thinks he's a loser. His life was all way, or in a way, no, a complete waste. And the God tells him, you know what? It's kind of like, I didn't watch the film. It's a Wonderful Life, because it's so boring, the black and white movie. But so the God tells him, so what would your ideal life would have been like, or what would you have really loved doing? And then he said, okay, I would love to watch all the birds in the world. Now, the problem with to watch to see every bird on earth is that it was contrived, and that's what I don't like about bird watchers. It's so contrived. I mean, there are all different ones, where the pelagic ones, or the armchair ones, or the backyard ones, where you don't do anything, you don't force it, and the birds come to your doorstep. So, and that's, to me, that's what the essence of real bird watching is like, where you're forced, you don't get binoculars out, and you go to every countries, and much respect if you do, like Phoebe Snursinger. But the point being, so, and the guy says, okay, and the guy realizes that he actually saw, like, all these beautiful birds in his life, and he didn't even know the scientific names of it, and it was all at all these different places, and because it was stored in his subconscious mind. I guess a blue jay while he was going to school one day, but he never paid consciously attention to it, because he didn't study it. He was an ornithologist, not a bird watcher who knew all the scientific names and could identify them. But his subconscious recorded all the images. So, probably he saw a cardinal, and that was the original plan for the story. And he realizes that, without even knowing, unbeknownst to him, to his conscious mind, that he probably watched about. And again, this is whatever you want it to be. Like, probably he watched all the birds in the world. Well, he cannot, because there are some are territorial. Some can be found either in Costa Rica, or in Papua New Guinea, or the birds of paradise, which are found in specific location only, um, or like Ahinga. Speaking of Ahinga, who was Alvin Platinga? Imagine you contract syncopate. What is syncopation? If you contract Alvin Platinga, you get Ahinga. Well, you don't get the Ahinga age. Anyways, I'm rambling now. So, as I was saying, so the idea was, that was the idea. Like, and another story that I wanted was this, but I didn't want it to make it like the whole boilerplate template of cop shows we have, where people with superpowers always helps out a cop. It's so boring. Even John Doe, which is such a beautiful movie, I mean, beautiful TV show, the one with Dominic Purcell, that also devolved into this crime drama. Even Blacklist, this cop show, which is, and that just speaks more about the lack of imagination of the writers and the producers. But at the same time, you want some constraint and theme, and you want to spin off more of that same theme into different variations. So anyway, so the story was, this guy, he was this stamp nut. Even the Unforgettable, the TV show based on hyperthermesiac Mary Lou Henner's life, that was also devolved into a cop show. And even Medium with Patricia Arquette. So, as I was saying, so okay, so this one, another variation would be this guy, this philatelist. All his life he collected all the stamps, and he probably has a collection of he has an entire collection of stamps. There's actually a guy named Keiho Cortesian. Sorry if I'm giving away his name, but he's public. He has blogs. He has a tremendous collection of stamps, over 500,000, I guess. That's a lot he amassed. So this guy, he studied only stamps, and from that he became extremely educated, because on stamps you see all the birds and with the scientific names, or uh, the the insects or fishes, and the buildings and the famous people, and that was his skill, and he somehow that could come into use in real life. So speaking of the other guy, the real life guy, the stamp collector, he's collected about, I think, that's amazing how that, I think that's a life well led, well spent. And reading his blog, I remember he says he doesn't wanna he avoids topical, because he just enjoys he That's the joy of pleasure of collecting stamp is it's not. People love order, just like the book To See Every Bird on Earth or A.J. Jacobs Know It All. And it's very American thing. Like we like themes. We wanna force everything into neat little packages and boxes as if, and then that's why you get all these artificial books and like memoirs and creative fictions and non-fictions or whatever, like where people force their, and even I'm guilty of it. My book At Will, which is on magic, like miracles, basically how I spun and weft and wefted and weaved this whole story about how the common uniting thread and theme was miracles. So yeah, going back to the original topic, how we our subconscious we in even in 30 years or 40 years, that's 365 days, the 24 hours. So this is a phenomenal I wonder how many seconds are there. I don't know, probably billions or if not millions. And if every second you get a snapshot of any random image, and you cut that by half given you're sleeping, and you cut that by half, that's an enormous amount of images in your mind. And considering the shows you saw, the TV, and they say before you die your whole life flashes before your eyes. And that's another thing about memory, because if someone were to say what did you do yesterday, and if you can't answer, the problem is not you, because if you were to answer what you did yesterday, you have to recite everything. You have to basically live the whole day. So basically, you need 24 hours to say what you did yesterday. And by the time you're doing this, you're missing what's happening right now. But somehow our brain is so complex and so dynamic and functional that we not only we could do that, if in some superior consciousness, I guess, such Chitananda, like yogic blissful consciousness, our brain does have the ability. I'm a firm believer what one monkey can do, another monkey can. And even Kim Peek's brain is supposed to have no corpus callosum. That's why it hacks like a whole brain and like captures everything. So I'm sure, and I'm a believer that if he could do that, in a relatively healthy person can even do even more. But society has this self-inflicting, self-inflicting theory that we are somehow doomed with these poor little creatures or materialistic science. It's and especially rampant in scientific communities. Science is no longer scientific. Kuhn talks about a paradigm. I mean, if Kuhn would probably ask, and I'm paraphrasing, I'm putting words in his mouth, is science scientific? Or is science falsifiable? And it is. So and even skeptics, they are the skeptics and are skeptical of their own skepticism. They are not the strict, real, hardcore skeptics like the Pyrrhonists from ancient Pyro. Because how can you know anything? It's just impossible. Even math. I remember the time when I went to depths of math and logic and principle of material implication and principles of explosion, and when I realized everything is just bullshit, I basically took the red pill. Was Noel Belknap, that Belknap. They did a book on where they did some, like, you have this logical sentences, so they just put subscripts, like it's complex kind of. Basically, they try to like material. Okay, like if A implies B, now implies, that's just an arrow, right? But if you were to say define imply, you can't define it, because in order to define that, you need another implication, and it's a circular, and it leads to infinite regress and whatnot. That's what uh, Agrippa, lemmas of Agrippa 5, I think so, or like was it Sextus Empiricus, or they prove. See, nothing is new under the sun, because the Taoists, the first line of Tao Te Ching is the Tao that can be talked about is not the real Tao. So that just straight out just says, everything is catch 22, Ouroboros, the snake eating itself, Godel, Escher, Bach, everything, like circular. you can't, you can't, you can't put a footnote because, like, and that was what Noel Belknap, and the Belknap, those guys, Belknap and some other guy, I forgot, or Belknap, and they tried to apparently fix mathematics, like logic. Yeah, like, um, because the set of axioms or even mathematics or logic, what binds it together, what is the glue that holds it together? You might say, like, if A causes B, fine, you can, people question and knock the validity of that sentence, or even A or B, the premise, but whatever the implies, what do you mean by implies? Cause, like, so as I was saying, that's when I realized that everything is falsifiable and you cannot know anything for sure. That's why the poet and the Zen monks talk about mu, and which is not even silence. It's just, it's, Alan Watts would say it is, even that is like glib, I think. And he would say reality is not really spiritual. It's not material. It's not even religious. It's. But I question that because of the stuffs you read about ayahuasca and DMT experiences and all this hallucinogenic and theogenic plants and herbs. Like, people, I mean, I'm sure there's some spiritual, I'm sure universe is spiritual to some extent. Like, there's this weird karmic justice. Just say, just take COVID-19 for instance. Like, even we are somehow, we have to face our own, let's talk about addiction and alcoholism. Suppose you're a guy who always at the end of the day needed to go to the bar at 6 and get drunk. You have to come to face with that. If you're a cop, again, you have to come to face with the fact that if everyone is staying home, who the, like, what were you really doing all your life, chasing all these bad guys, supposedly bad guys, and making, thinking you're making a difference? It's like as people say, COVID-19 exposed how fragile our life really is, because even no matter how meaningful life you lived, it is still meaningless in the span of, in the eye blink of the universe's time length, and from Max Planck constant. Isn't that the what it's called? The earliest time is the Planck length, or Planck something, Planck's constant. So to go back to the original, the leitmotif, the original guiding motive, the recurring motive, not to recapitulate, because I want to see how long I can talk about ramble and bamble on. That we our subconscious pretty much, and it's not just me, it's everyone. We remember a lot, and but to activate it at will and to process it is a different matter, and to even speak clearly and effectively, to communicate effectively, that's a different art altogether. I mean, you can pray if you suppose, if you know the whole Britannica, or but if you were to mumble it, and I mean, how it just, it's just a not good demonstration. That's why I wanted to, so all my life I tried to memorize. I tried to fix a round hole in a square peg. I thought, okay, you see these, like, in, remember the phenomenon, the scene, John Travolta's scene in Phenomenon, where they ask him, okay, name in under 60 seconds, in under a minute, name all the animals you can think of, the mammals you can think of, and then he takes his time and he says, uh, and then he alphabetizes them, but and then he just rattles them out. But see, most people don't, just because we don't have abilities like those Hollywood image, like where you can learn Portuguese in 28 minutes or whatever, like, doesn't mean that we don't have a superpower, super encyclopedic mind. We do. but it's very natural, and it's very soft and very like it accrued at very snail's pace. But just like Taoists will say, or suppose right now, suppose you eat, right, and you just go out there and you sit and you do nothing but you sit in the cold, and it's night right now, so you just sit in the cold. Every second that passes by, you'll not feel it at first, but cumulatively at the end of like freaking not even 6 hours, like 4 hours, if you just sit out there, you'll be cold, miserable, hungry, and bitter, and you'll be manic, psychotic. But it all happens slowly. It's just nature doesn't force anything that happen, any grand gargantuan project or that happened, even the pyramids. I wonder how long it really took. I mean, how long it can take, probably. Like, probably spanned over different pharaohs, different dynasties, and even 100, 200 years. So I like that quote by Tony Robbins, but I lost my even Tony Robbins. I don't follow him anymore. But he said people overestimate how much they can do in a year and underestimate how much they could do in 10 years, or something along that line. I'm questioning all these people, like all the people I used to like, and all this, pomp and all these chest thumping people, like even Professor, like I mentioned Professor because the basketball player, because they project this ultra positive image, but or I just watched two videos. One is the Professor, another is some magic guy like J Magic. I'm not shitting on them, but the point being they edit and everything, and they paint themselves to be the good guys. And if you challenge them, you're cocky. If you're a heckler, but you're playing the same game. You're looking for attention, but if the heckler heckles you, you call him an attention whore. Or the professor, he's this cocky. He's become so cocky that even if you challenge him, you're somehow is like I mean, so that's the thing. And YouTube promotes these guys, and but before, when I was young, I would be like, oh, YouTube promotes these guys. These are so cool, and the whole world loves them, viral, and but now the more bitter and cynical I got, like Schopenhauer, I realized how the illusory nature of this. That these are all, these are just even the entertainment industry, the music industry, which is the radio is a sham, is a joke. I mean, the mainstream music and the TV shows. These are. I'm not trying to sound bitter and cynical and dystopian, but you have to question it. People think like because suppose they're probably I don't know, like 10, at least 10, not at least. Imagine they're like million YouTubers who are like who probably gets like about 10 or 20 or 200 at most, or at most 1,000 views for the video. They're the majority, and the minority of people who gets their videos viral, because it's all these are all Fata Morgana and Prom Doy and illusion, optical illusion. Not an optical illusion, just basically these are all facade, theatrical, smoke and mirrors, because we think that okay, not we, even me, for a long time we thought like, okay, unless you become this viral sensation, then that's I thought what determines the quality of it. But there's so many viral shits that just suck, and they're garbage. But back, I'm rambling and ranting right now, but going back to the main theme, uh encyclopedic mind, I think we all have it. We all have it to some extent, and we don't even realize how rich and varied and fertile and beautiful our whole memories are, because it's hard to describe, because if I talk about something, you'll say I have a proclivity towards it. So how do I randomize it? Okay, because any if see that's another thing. I cannot randomly think of anything because I had a bias toward it. Just like in real life, you cannot create something random. Even the random number generator has a seed. Random noise, I don't know how random noise works, or how random really random randomness is apparently created by random white noise, I guess. But even that is some sort of seed. What about stock market or ergodic theory, or is that what called ergodic theory, like the drunkard drunkard's walk hypothesis, like how it's supposed to be really random, or even Riemann hypothesis, like prime numbers, like how they're random and not random at the same time. That's interesting. Or the eigenvalues of the matrix, the whole Montgomery pair correlation conjecture. I wonder if you can solve if you solve Montgomery pair correlation conjecture, if that actually solves Riemann hypothesis, or if you solve PNP, if it solves Riemann hypothesis. But I don't want to talk about Riemann hypothesis right now. So, but that's a good point though, because all my life I thought, okay, so this is what genius is, and this is what it's supposed to be, but this is how you do it, and unless you can do all these super extraordinary things, and even talk about seal feed. I was there once and I failed, and I'm not saying this because I failed the 50-hour Kokoro can, but even that is someone's idea, like that's, and I say that with respect, Mark Divine, but even anything that's just people's, because any approval external authority, that's just someone else's version of what. See, I could easily make my, but then again I have to live up to it. But suppose if I were to ask you, okay, I'll create my own intellectual or knowledge test by asking 10 random questions, and if you can't answer any of them, that means you're not worth anything. But that, so basically I'm the authority, and that's my validity, that's my approval. And if you can't gain my approval, and suppose I was some brand name, suppose, okay, let's, for instance, if Wendy's, for instance, for somehow for God, Mars colliding with Jupiter for some god awful reason, were to say, if everyone worship Wendy's like Harvard, for instance, and they had this 10 question rule, or even me, because, or any random Joe Blow, like if they had this 10 question rule, and ideally you can set it up so that no one can answer your question, and no one can live up to your approval or validation, like, okay, so what would be 10 random questions that probably no one in the world knows? Okay. um I don't know, because I'm sure someone will know some question, 10 question, but suppose I could make it as extremely difficult as possible, and the odds of you knowing those 10 questions would be extremely small, like exceedingly small. I mean, even if you're a super duper genius, you cannot get it. Like, for instance, without googling, how many, if you are to add all the stars of constellation, and I'll name Orion, Cygnus, Ursa Major, Ursa Minor. Okay, four. If you were to add all the stars of those constellations, what would be the end? How many stars will be there? That's a random question. That's number one. Number two, recite Charles Turing thesis of Wikipedia article. I mean, what are the odds you know that? No one knows that unless you wrote that article. Number three, um, when was Faber born? Faber, the entomologist. Again, a random question. Number four, what is the coordinates of the birthplace of Gibran? Number five, Gibran, Khalil Gibran. Number five. So you see, this is like the Navy SEAL or Special Forces version of intellectualism, if into like academia or whatever, like of knowledge. Because I could say, like, you get my idea, or like law, like what is the origin of omnibus motion, or like anything. Like, you can always trick someone, and even though you're Navy SEAL or this strong guy, this martial artist, UFC fighter, or Conor McGregor or Kobe Bryant, there will always be someone who's either somehow better than you in one way or another, in who doesn't want to be known, who doesn't want to be seen. There is a story about martial arts. I forget the name of the book, but I can visualize it. It's this thin. It's not that thin, but it's kind of like A4 size encyclopedia of martial arts, and it talks about this. I think Indonesia. I think where they go, and the martial art, the artist, the martial art troupe, rather, wants to challenge. I think we're challenging all the people, and this frail-looking guy in this loincloth, this dark skinned guy. These are my elaborations, my color. And he just frail looking guy comes and he takes a coconut and he shouts, this gives his Kia and he breaks. And he's just a random, guy, well, average guy walking in the street. He doesn't have any belt or anything. Just like the book To See All the Birds on the Earth or like Black Belt, these are all man-made creation. At the end of the day, what COVID-19 exposes is ultimately nothing matters. Be it certificate, be it any accolade, be it Oscar, degrees, I guess, Riemann hypothesis, Fields Medal, Abel Prize, Nobel Prize, or Fields Medal, or like MacArthur Genius. And we all, the way society condition is like, before it was like, either you be doctor or engineer, but then society got trickier and more subtle and more one up men, like, it's like, okay, even if you don't have to be doctor, engineer, lawyer, but whatever you do, try to be the best at. Why is it, I mean, why is everything a competition? Is like everything, if you're an advertising agency, it's a competition. Creativity, who is more creative than who is more, it's so disgustingly puerile. People, an alien would laugh at us if you think that we have this idea somehow some people is beautiful than other or some funnier than other. It's all subjective. Just because vox populi is not necessarily vox dei, voice of the people is not necessarily voice of God, even though it is true sometimes, and you get that when your kundalini rises, or like, um Timothy Leary talked about the circuitry in the brain, and I once read that. I think I ordered from eBay or Amazon like a long time ago. I think from eBay, and it was this weird cover, the book with some. It was obviously psychedelic, but it talked about the circuits of brain, and he and Ramdas, and there was another guy I forget. No, Anton. Was it Anton Wallace? No, what's his name? I don't listen to him much. That's why. Anyways, but these people wrote the Tibetan, the Bardo, the 40 days book. These three collaborated and Sam came up with, I forget the name, and I don't want to Google it. I can't Google it because I'm recording right now. But what I was gonna say, um, Tumo, it sounds like an interesting concept. Tumo, how people with Tumo yoga can change that would be an extremely, I think Navy SEAL should pursue that. Yeah, man, I want so the whole COVID-19 thing ends, but that's a good skill to have, either be a ninja or a homeless guy. I used to think, well, not used to, but I used to think somehow if you're a homeless guy you could be a ninja or Yamabushi, because you're putting yourself in under so much stress. But that's another thing. People think, I was once in a restaurant and in a relatively well-off area, and these two businessmen, like, straight out of movies, those, suited, booted, except they weren't wearing suit. But anyways, so they were saying how the real man, there's awfully rich people, like two awfully rich guys. They were having conversation, and one was saying how the real free guy is a homeless man, and I wonder how that somehow subconsciously planted the seed, the glorification of it, because here they were two, just obviously well-spoken, rich Ivy League type of guys who are like glorifying this homelessness. But even homelessness, like homeless people, they're like subject, they're prey. I mean, they're what is the word I'm looking for? They are they're the throws. Yeah, that's the word I'm looking for. The mercy to elements, because if it rains, I mean, no one is really, and that's what COVID-19 is ultimately exposing. Like, I mean, if you think you're the hotshot, you shit don't saying that you're the shit that, you know, you made it, you're independent. Like, what about Ray Dalio? I don't know anything about Ray Dalio. I just know the name because I heard it in a Tim Ferriss podcast, like how he's the Navy SEAL of. The point being, no matter how much of a badass you're, like of a stock market guy or a financial guy, Tony Robbins, or okay, Bill Gates might be an exception, or Elon Musk. But the point I'm trying to say is suddenly you can't bail yourself, your billions won't bail yourself out of this COVID 19 paradox because, yeah, it's not like you spend money and you come up with a vaccine. And I mean, yes, money has its place, but at the same time, but ironically, no matter if you're prince or pauper, you're homeless or a king or an emperor or a president, everyone, no one is truly free. People has this illusion that we are free, that we are self-sufficient, we're sovereign, we somehow made it. You can move out of your mama's basement and don't watch Star Wars anymore. You're somehow the man. But dude, you are that's such a that's it's farcical. It's so risible because you think right now, um, because right now I have okay I have the Mandela's book staring at me from my bookshelf, Long Walk to Freedom, and people might think, okay, this guy he did this, I'm sure, no, I mean, no disrespect, like obviously he this man who spent 27, 28 years in prison, I mean obviously he, but and he wasn't born free. I mean, he was born free, but he soon found out because of his race he wasn't free, and then out of after this whole struggle and Sturm and Drang, is that how you say it? I wonder who was the last person who used that phrase, Sturm and Drang. That you think, okay, he found freedom and he's truly free, and he was the president. He became. It's like the classic Cinderella story. But what I'm trying to drive at is everything you own can be taken away from you. I mean, and it only takes an invisible force like nature's COVID-19 or like a tsunami or an earthquake or any act of God, or that's why it's called act of God, like any disaster or terrorist attack, whatever, earthquake, fire, like to to bring us down to earth and ground in with the humility that all the belief it challenges all our beliefs, that we believe that, okay, if you do this, and it works for and everyone is, no one is spared, everyone is held accountable, like even it's like it's not like the homeless people right now are they're spared, even they're suffering, even the rich guys they're suffering. It's like leveler, this it has this way of leveling people because yeah, ultimate independence and self-sufficiency, these are all illusion. I mean, just like accolades, everything. So, and I never took psychedelic, but I'm sure this is what happens when you take psychedelics. You try because after the psychedelic experience, people come and questioning the whole. I'm not saying they become nut jobs who get become conspiracy theorists and Illuminati's, and but they question authorities and the deeply held beliefs they held to be true. And that's the good thing about this whole quarantine, and I should follow it more. I mean, not I should follow it, that what I'm trying to say is like, if you were to shut down everything, no TV, no internet, no nothing, and just go into this isolation, and you'd realize, and you just go into the recess of your mind, how many of this, because even me who has a proclivity towards Alan Watts, even he can be questioned. He put on pedestal. I mean, not put on pedestal. Put on a what do you call stand, or because even though I think he was really enlightened. By enlightened, I don't mean holy or like. I mean you reach in a state this not super conscious this. See, Choo Choo asked someone asked Chow Chow or Choo Choo Chow Chow whatever. It's a Tao story, like what is ordinary consciousness, and he said, what is the Tao, and he said your ordinary consciousness is the Tao. So yeah, that's another thing. People think that if you're enlightened somehow you have this super conscious state, or no. What I mean, what I think happens when you're first of all you realize that that's what waking up means, that ultimately it was all an illusion, all these deeply held beliefs. As Nietzsche said, there are no facts, only interpretation. All these are not axioms. These are all basically not set on stone but written on water, actually. So no one has the answer. Not Abraham Hicks, not Noranda Byrne, not people, the New Age gurus. No one has the answer because ultimate and That's why Alan Watts would say even he doesn't have all the answers, because the only one of the things that I disagree with him, that reality is not religious or spiritual, because that doesn't mean that there is no karma or the people. It's a, I mean, everyone can just do whatever they please. I mean, probably we can. Probably I'm not questioning that belief of mine. Probably it is an unsavory, bitter pill that I don't want to swallow. That probably there is no, suppose, because if, and that's another thing with the whole new age movement, they become the holier than thou syndrome. Well, this yoga mad, I'm so kind, love, God is love, God is loving kindness. That's also disgustingly toxic, because suppose if I were God and if I wanted to give a stern message to the mankind, to humanity, then I have to do something stern. I have to. People think God is all love and blah 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 with the kumbaya, but no, God can be an asshole. He could be like a stern teacher, and some people do find that out with if they do salvia or like ibogaine or whatever. And like spirit, just because something is spiritual doesn't mean it is all, of course, what is holy and all that is all lovey-dovey. Like, that's a big problem and impediment to spiritual progress, if you think that in order to be like self-actualized, or if you reach that pyramidal, that peak, the zenith of that peak, where you're self-actual, the Maslow's pyramid, basically like where the highest state of mind, where everything is neutral. That's what really is enlightenment or self-actualization. Is you reach a state of equanimity and neutrality, and and where you don't have any beliefs. You're just like, as they say, the Chinese proverb, the story, the a perfect man employs his, I don't know who said that, Chuangzu. A perfect man employs his mind like a mirror. It holds nothing, it grabs nothing, it receives but does not keep. Something on that, along that line. So point being, yeah. So yeah, okay. So I don't even know what I'm talking about. I don't have any overarching theme. Um, so enlightenment. People think it's all about you have to become like Ram Dass and or like a monk, Dalai Lama, and that's what enlightenment people project, has this image. Just like, and that's another charade. People think, people have so vehemently against religion, but that's again, New Age is just another religion. Instead of you rejecting Christianity or Islam or whatever, Judaism, but again, you're putting another label of what good person should be or God should be, or God could be very stern as a, because one of them, again, you have to take that with grain of salt. Like this guy had this near death experiment, and again, and to go off on a tangent, NDE is very similar to DMT, the whole tunnel and the whole life review and all those things. Anyways, the point being, he came back and he was mad at this person, and somehow, and it was after his NDE, and he heard this voice that said, "You'll serve him nothing but love." Okay, now yes, love is that, ultimately the message, but at the same time, the person, the if there was even this spiritual force or God or whatever, this being, the voice he heard, the ex cathedra voice, that it was very stern. And it was like command. And I blogged about it once on Facebook post, like, like how, that's one of my favorite example, how Peppermint, played by Jennifer Garner, the character who was first, and it's parallel to Count of Monte Cristo, and but these are all fictional, but that's what happens in real life. People, grow as a baby. It reminds me of that image where the Indian thingy, the circle of life, the reincarnation with this baby from the womb. So anyways, that's what coming of age really is, that it's not about good or bad, it's not about situational ethics or anything. You ultimately, after you reach that, you go over that, you internalize morality. Now my thoughts are all sporadic. I want to talk about so many different things that's like simultaneously, like I can't really parallel process and multi process all the thoughts that are coming in right now. But the point that I'm trying to get at is, okay, so Peppermint by Jennifer Garner, what he was trying to do is, like, in order to stop an alcoholic, she took out a gun and he said, if you don't stop this, I'm gonna blow your brains off, something along that line. Now, her intention is good. She wants to make a change to the alcoholic guy who was being rude to his daughter or son or whatever. This is, see how reliable unreliable our memories are when we speak. But I'm sure if we were to lie down and rewind that film, I would know if it was a daughter or a, I think it was a daughter, and that was the guy. So that's another thing. So what I was trying to say is God can be stern. So it's not like when the Christianity, or not Christianity, like New Age people think that God is love, and you see this odiously toxic, and it's this icky and disgustingly miasmic, this the reason why I'm using all the strong words is because that's just another facade. I mean, you don't have to gild the lily. The sun doesn't broadcast its shining. So, and you see all this inspirational. I'm sure they mean well because they burst all this positivity. But positivity is negativity. So you see all this irritatingly odious, disgusting, the post Facebook like this Facebook. They're only meant for Facebook though. Like what they talk about, But how is that relevant to you? Because I'm sure if Sri Chinmoy, or I don't know, what's his name? Maharaji or Ramana Maharishi, I'm sure these people are indeed great guys who reach exalted heights, Advaita and whatnot. But the reason why they came up on those truths is because of their life experience, and that may not apply to yours. I mean, it's like if someone says, okay, I've reached top of Everest, it's nothing's in there. So call off searching. Yes, call off searching, just like Papaji's documentary said. Well, yeah, but if the only reason you can say that is because you actually fucking climbed Everest and that's where you saw the whole vista and that's where you can. But if you wanted to, from my perspective, that's not such is not the case. So people who has this beliefs that oh God is love or this is be kind or Jesus Christ consciousness or Krishna consciousness, yeah, they reach those heights and that's what they're seeing from that vantage point, obviously. But if some fucking guy comes and fucking takes a club and he hit me, I'm not gonna preach Krishna or Christ consciousness. And at that stage, that reality is true, holds water. If I'm bitter and some guy attacks me and I lash back, probably that is the more purer form of God consciousness that ever can be. And that's the damage this whole new age, this positive and loving kindness, this goody goody movement is doing. Alan Watts would agree with me that, goody goodies are thieves of virtue because the highest virtue is the one you can talk about. The highest virtue is non virtue because by being all this disgustingly, odiously good, projecting this mask of this goodness, you're basically drawing a line and say this is what I'm not, and that's why. And if you're that means you're not me, and that's how the duality becomes. So the more people preach about kindness and being nice to other, you're actually doing more damage than good because that means suppose I'm not kind, I'm an unkind, and there's even this another disgustingly this Facebook post that said, "Oh, be kind to the kind people, be kind to the unkind people." And I once ranted about it. I think wrote about it. So that means I'm better than you because I'm kind. I'm kind to you and you're unkind. But do you see how hypocritical that is? Like you're shaming that person and you're pointing like I'm not. It's like that is the most disgustingly, odiously devilish image that one can be. I once saw like where they pretend like they be kind to the kind people, be kind to the unkind people. But the moment you call someone unkind, that itself shows that you don't know, you don't get the point of it, because or else you wouldn't call him unkind. Some people like the worst you can imagine. That can be sometimes the most purest of all. Even some convoluted way, Hitler or I'm not gonna name other people, or let's just keep it Pol Pot or Idi Amin. Even their line of thinking, the twisted logical thinking, like Alonzo from Training Day, even that has God consciousness in that, no matter how twisted it is. It's like because suppose people with all this new age yoga mat, kale shake people is that they think they're so holy and they don't smoke. I mean, they do weed but it's like saying, okay, that cactus you see or the corpse flower, those are ugly, and the rose is pretty. But in reality, these are all man-made. a cactus is as beautiful as a rose or a corpse flower. And so there is beauty in corpse flower, just like there is beauty in corpse flower. There's a beauty in the ugliness, in the ugliest of human, in the ugliness, in the unkindness, in the cruelty, because there is a reason why those negative emotions happen, and it's the society that labels those emotions as negative. And if someone were to misbehave, like suppose we go to a grocery store and some guy all of a sudden shouts at his wife or like his son or whatever this, or some mother like to a teenage daughter shouts at her, or like the brother shouts at her sister or whatever, and we all, and we have this self-righteous thing that ultimately we draw the line. Okay, just because he's acting that way he's bad, and just because acting in a nice way is good. It reminds me of the Tokyo subway story, where, but that's another thing. Just Google it. But there's a beautiful depiction of it by Ramdas. So, and that does more damage than good by, because we are our worst enemies, and sometimes the people who preach all these good positive messages, they're the devil, real devil, because they're doing more damage than good actually. So, and it's a balance. I mean, you don't want to be too negative, bitter, cynical, and you don't want to be too positive. And I know one guy, so one food reviewer who is so positive. Dude, it's so disgusting. He would taste a freaking ketchup packet that he found on the street, and he'd be like, "Oh wow, xanthan gum!" Like, and it's so fake, and it makes me want to puke. But I like him. I mean, it depends on what state of mind I am in. Like, we tend to think, and that's another thing. People think weed is good because it makes you calm, and